Why is everyone talking about the big one? We need to worry about much bigger things that could be coming. Earthquakes, or seismic tremors, are phenomena that have been occurring for billions of years, characterized by vibrations in the Earth's crust caused by the movement of tectonic plates. Every day, thousands of small earthquakes occur, many of which go unnoticed by people. However, when these vibrations intensify, they can result in significant changes to the landscape, causing extensive damage and, in densely populated areas, even loss of human and animal life. Severe earthquakes in the oceanic crust have the potential to displace large bodies of water, generating tsunamis, gigantic waves that can cause devastation by hitting inhabited areas, destroying buildings, and causing fatalities. Seismic activity is monitored by seismographs, and based on this information and studies into the movements of tectonic plates, it is possible to identify areas of greater seismic risk and implement preventive measures to protect the population from potential disasters. Nowadays, it is very difficult to predict earthquakes, but technology is advancing all the time, and it is possible that we can identify regions that are prone to these types of catastrophes. Speaking of the Earth's surface, we know that the Earth is made up of 52 tectonic plates, 14 of which are major and 38 minor. Among the major and largest are the South American plate, the Pacific plate, and the Australian plate. The subduction zones are the specific areas where the plates usually come into contact with each other. The smaller plates usually suffer from the collision of the larger plates, causing them to sink onto the larger plates. And when they break free and come back, an earthquake occurs, almost certainly of 9 degrees or more. Unfortunately, this phenomenon of nature has already affected many regions. In 1960, a subduction zone caused the Great Valdivia earthquake in Chile, measuring 9.4 degrees. It was the largest earthquake ever recorded scientifically. One region that could suffer consequences in the future is California, which is cut by the San Andreas Fault. This earthquake that many fear is coming is called the Big One. Although the Big One sounds like a major catastrophe, something even worse could happen. A group of scientists is very concerned about an area that is home to a huge geological fault and has recently begun to spew a strange liquid deep into the Pacific Ocean. The Cascadia subduction zone is a gigantic coastal geological fault that runs from California through the entire coast of the United States and ends in Canada. The fear is well-founded. Recent research shows that the region could cause the biggest earthquake in the history of the United States. The Pacific Circle of Fire, or Pacific Ring of Fire, or sometimes just Ring of Fire, is an area where there are a large number of earthquakes and strong volcanic activity located in the North Pacific Ocean, of which Cascadia is a part. The Cascadia subduction zone is located at the junction between the North American continental plate and the Juan de Fuca oceanic plate. This results in an area of subduction, where the oceanic plate is forced under the continental plate in a dip zone. The region is known for its significant seismic activity, including earthquakes of great magnitude. The movement of the tectonic plates along the Cascadia subduction zone can generate potentially destructive earthquakes with magnitudes greater than 9.0. These earthquakes can be accompanied by tsunamis due to the abrupt displacement of the seabed. Geological studies indicate that the Cascadia subduction zone experiences major earthquakes approximately every 500 years. In addition, these events often trigger tsunamis that can affect coastal areas along the Pacific Northwest region of the United States and Canada. How can we be sure of this? Well, before the 1980s, everyone thought that the risk of tsunamis on the Northwest Pacific coast could only arise from earthquakes that were very far away, and that they would arrive when everyone had already been warned. There was a lack of concern about the danger of local tsunamis, as there were no records of such events, and even less belief that the Cascadia subduction zone was capable of producing a major quake. The last earthquake considered to be major happened hundreds of years ago, when the Pacific coast had no trace of European colonization and was a land occupied by Native Americans. So there are not many reports from this time, since Native Americans were not literate enough to be able to report events. Apparently, for the settlers, that region was a peaceful area to live in. There was fertile and good land for planting, so they appropriated this land without knowing the dangers that lurked there. Then a century and a half passed, and throughout this period, no earthquakes were noticed in the northeastern Pacific region. The silence of this region does not mean tranquility, but rather that a long period of tranquility is passing before there can be new activity. 50 years have passed since they began to study and understand this region's history and seismic background. The Ring of Fire, of which Cascadia is a part, is where the world's most devastating earthquakes have occurred. This region alone is home to 75% of all the volcanoes on Earth. In addition, the Ring of Fire has mountain ranges and oceanic trenches that form at plate boundaries stretching from New Zealand to Indonesia and Japan, cutting across the ocean to Alaska and along the western coast of the Americas to Chile. The vast majority of earthquakes in the region are caused by continental plates that remain locked by oceanic plates. North America is locked by the Juan de Fuca, and then they suddenly unlock. The vast majority of volcanoes in this area are the result of the oceanic plates sliding down the continental plates. These plates reach very extreme temperatures and pressures which end up melting the rock above them. Much of the discovery of the case came from Japan, based on old records and documents from the time, which said that a gigantic wave had devastated the coast. This wave was unveiled as a tsunami, but as predicted, little was known about the Great Wave and what caused it. A few years later, specifically around 1996, it was discovered that the tsunami arose from a magnitude 9 earthquake in the year 1700. Later on, they discovered that the native tribes had also recorded this event in their unwritten way. Everything fell into place like a jigsaw puzzle, and geological studies led to the conclusion that the Cascadia submarine fault had ruptured along its entire length, causing extreme tremors and strong tsunamis. This was not a single event, but rather a series of repetitions over irregular periods of hundreds of years. From geological studies, it can be concluded that 41 extreme earthquakes have occurred in Cascadia over the last 10,000 years. You may be wondering, how do they know this happened? What happens is that when a large-scale earthquake occurs in the open sea, the upheaval causes the mud and the area to begin to shift, flowing down the length of the continent's shores into canyons at the bottom of the sea. From the fine particles that accumulate between the great activities of the tectonic plates, it is possible to do carbon-14 dating and other methods, allowing us to obtain greater precision in the periods in which the great seismic activities have occurred over the last 10,000 years. The hypothesis is that there will come a time when the plates will no longer be able to sustain the compressive movement, and then the North American plate will be able to jump out of the way, causing an earthquake of magnitude 9.2. While the consequences of an earthquake greater than 9 are devastating, the entire Pacific belt will be shaken. Initially, the seismic waves reach the coast with a magnitude of 7 or 8. From California to Canada, the extreme northwest will sink 2 meters and move 10 or 30 meters to the west. Part of all this devastation will occur below sea level, moving an extreme amount of water, causing the collapse of buildings, bridges, and major landslides. Because of the amount of water that will devastate the ground, the phenomenon of liquefaction will occur, in which the ground will no longer be so solid, but will become liquid like mud, and it will no longer be possible to hold anything solid on this ground. A large wave will form, caused by the displacement below sea level. This wave will rise. It will be like a large mountain of water that will then collapse, one part of which should go west and the other east, becoming a large wall of water of at least 1,000 reaching the northwest coast, with up to 15 minutes after the earthquake has started, which is very little time for people to try to take shelter in higher places. It is believed that in a quake of this magnitude, the waves can reach from 9 to 12 meters, but there are still suggestions that they could reach at least 30 meters. In the northeastern Pacific region, where around 7 million people currently live, the impact could affect around 360,000 square kilometers, including cities such as Seattle, Tacoma, Portland, and others. When this major rupture occurs, one of the worst catastrophes ever to hit North America must be predicted. We can cite the impact of previous disasters, such as the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, in which approximately 3,000 people were affected by the disaster, and Hurricane Katrina, which affected 2,000 people in 2005. Unfortunately, forecasts for the Cascadia event suggest that around 20,000 people could be affected by the disaster, and 2 million will have to evacuate for several months. Now, we must ask ourselves, is there any way to cushion such a disaster? The Cascadia subduction zone is unique in that it is very quiet, which makes it even more difficult to identify possible signs of new seismic activity. Still, after the tsunami that hit Sumatra, the local and U.S. authorities decided to use a security system that uses satellite detection to signal small changes in sea level. On the coasts of the United States and Canada, it is already possible for the first warning messages to be issued from the Alert Center 5 minutes before an earthquake, ensuring that the Cascadia Fault can get an alert in about 25 minutes. Given the size of the catastrophe that could occur, this is a very short time, but any time available before an earthquake strikes is precious. What do you think of the Cascadia subduction zone? Leave your opinion in the comments. If you like this video, subscribe, leave a like, and keep following us for more interesting facts.